Welcome back to the Real World Podcast, everybody. We've dusted off Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures, where we break down every X-Men movie ever made, and then some other stuff. And in order to do that, you need two ingredients. You need a Mike, and you need a Matt. And Mike could mean microphone in this case, because we're doing a podcast, but we're not going there. We're not taking that low-hanging fruit. I am Matt Waters. I'm the second half of Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures. The first and better half, because he owns the domain. Mike Thomas, what's going on? It's a breezy afternoon for you, I think, this time. We normally record a little bit later in the day.
Yes, and you don't have to stay up until the AM to record. That must be nice.
It's not bad. Now I have a job. Those recordings have been a little bit less kind of
energized.
Yeah. I feel it the next day.
Yeah, but yeah, it's the afternoon. It's spring. It's hot. It's annoyingly hot already.
It was really hot in England yesterday.
Yeah,
it was real bad. So welcome to the Real World. We talk about films here. Many
and
of
the weather.
them, and the weather, and many other things. Many of them are superhero films. Check out our other stuff. We did all of Batman, the Tape Crusaders miniseries, intotherealworld.com, soundcloud.com/Mike and Matt, Futurama.net, Matt's secret side project that's launching like this week, I think, maybe. Anyway, Legion. We're going to talk about Legion. A justification to talk about X-Men for potentially the last time in a long time. Because they do not seem to have their shit together in the X universe.
We're gonna be breaking down Gifted week by week, obviously, in the fall.
Oh yeah, of course. The motion comic version of Gifted.
Wait, but you know there's an actual TV show coming, right?
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, yeah, I'm very out of it. Like, I watched that Thor trailer, and that just took all of my brain, and now I'm talking to you, so my IQ drops 50 points straight away. That was uncharacteristically mean. Let's talk about Legion.
That was very mean.
Yeah, I'm sorry, bro. You're very intelligent for an American. There you go.
Your overlords are a baby and a frail old woman. Calm down.
Fair enough. So, Legion. This is it was announced, I don't even know how long ago now, but when it was announced that Fox were going to get into the TV game, partner up with Marvel a little bit more officially, and tell the story of David Haller, famously Professor Xavier's son. That's not a spoiler, that's just who he is. Come on now. I don't actually really remember my initial thoughts on the announcement. It wasn't until they dropped the first trailer, I don't even know how long ago now, like 6 months ago, something like that. I started getting quite excited. It is from Noah Hawley of Fargo fame. So I guess if you, unlike me, had actually seen Fargo when this was announced, you probably would have been a little bit more excited. I have now seen Fargo, but at the time I was like, okay, sure. So yeah, it had quite a lot of hype, and it's, in some ways, there's a bit of a narrative around this that it's going to save the X-Men in certain ways. Do you remember much about like your initial reaction to this announcement, etc.?
It didn't sound particularly great, but the Fargo showrunner was enough to sell me on it.
Sure.
You know, like the cast didn't blow me away. Actually, I did forget Aubrey Plaza was on it, so that probably would have forgetting that probably unfairly dampened my enthusiasm. But it wasn't something I was excited for. Just like intrigued. Clearly, was going to watch kind of thing.
Yes. And fast forward to a few weeks ago when the first episode debuted, and one of the more talked about new shows I've come across in a while. I feel like almost everyone was going, oh, did you see Legion? Or Legion's supposed to be really good. And I don't think I actually watched it for like a week or two. I think you were like quite late to it. I think you sort of marathoned the whole thing. But it certainly had a fair bit of buzz. Certainly coming out of that first one.
Yeah, I marathoned like episodes 1 through 5, and then I did 6 through 8 basically at the end. So I didn't get that week to week experience that some people had, but sure. I did at least read and hear about the buzz. Like it was kind of weird. It wasn't, for the most part, it wasn't like this, oh my god, can you believe what happened last night buzz. There was just almost like this steady stream of, Legion's pretty good, you should watch it buzz through the entire 8 weeks.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's very different. to obviously on TV right now you've got Arrow, The Flash, Gotham, those other bullshit shows, Legends of Tomorrow. That's probably a good show. I don't know. I've never seen it.
I've heard good things intermittently about all those shows.
Sure. I was super into Arrow for like a season and a half. I kept watching for another season and I was like, nope, done. And Flash lost me like halfway through its first season. But yeah, there are TV shows on superhero themed, even Marvel ones, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., etc. This is very different to those, would be the most obvious thing you could say. I don't want to be reductive, but it is kind of a more sophisticated show than all of those, which are a little bit, several of those are on the CW, which, that immediately tells you things. But this is a Noah Hawley-ass show, I would say. Like, it definitely has that vibe to it. It's not quite as... It's not Fargo, but it certainly has some common elements with it, I would say.
And I think that the biggest common element is it feels distinct and it feels like it knows exactly what it wants to be. That's what it's going to be. And, you can feel a voice throughout the entire thing.
Yes. And it feels like a project from a creator, not like by committee or anything.
Yeah. Like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. always felt like a camel.
Yeah.
I did like Agent Carter. I only saw the first season, but I did like that. But whenever I've dabbled in these other shows, there just wasn't enough there to justify the commitment.
Yeah.
And even with Legion, we'll get into more detail in a bit, but while I wasn't enamored with the first half of the show, I was like, I could tell this is something to keep going with.
Yes, they're telling you a story. They're not just filling episodes week to week or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a difficult task to talk about 8 hours of television in the length of one of our normal episodes, but we're going to give it a go. The hardest question, I guess, would be like, what are your... I mean, you've kind of hinted at this, that you weren't super into it through the first half. Where did you land on it in like the broadest terms possible? Like, how much did you like it?
I think the final 2 or 3 episodes was when the show fell into a space that I would enjoy the most. Particularly, I think actually my favorite bit from the show was with Hamish Linklater in season 8, and episode 8. And episode 8 basically starts entirely with this one side interrogator character from episode 1 and maybe episode 2, who we revealed is not dead, is a human being with a life, and we follow him and his path in the meanwhile, what happened with him for the past 6 episodes kind of thing. And
that felt very Fargo-y, that little intro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, just the fact that they you had this incredibly mysterious first season of a show, and they spent the first 10 minutes with the character probably very few people remembered. And, most people were probably confused. You're like, oh, well, that's clearly Dr. Doom's assistant from Fantastic Four 1. But, the show did a really good job of, like, letting him not be held down by that issue. But I just, like, that whole story, I'm just like, this makes this show not only stand out, but this makes this corner of the universe stand out from pretty much every other superhero universe, which is, in that 10 minutes, we learn far more about this. Villain would be a strong word in the beginning, but certainly a mysterious character who was on a side that was clearly actively holding down our protagonist.
He was not David's friend.
Yes, he was not a friend of David. He was not an ally of David. And only a TV show could have really the time to do that, and only a good TV show would decide to do that. And I think once we entered that space where there was a little bit more forward momentum with the plot, where we started to flesh out with some of these other characters, that was where I was kind of like locked in and really like enjoying every moment. The first 5 episodes or so, I was kind of watching it like 75% attention. Like, I was watching enough so I knew what was going on, but I was like, too much of this feels like stuff I don't need to retain.
Okay.
And the whole premise of a lot of the show is, or underlying kind of thought throughout a lot of the show is, what you're seeing right now might not be actually what's happening.
Yes, the first episode particularly felt very, you don't know what's going on, fuck you. Yeah. And I didn't love that first episode because it felt intentionally inaccessible. Like, they were going out of their way to be like, who knows what's going on, man? Who knows?
Yeah.
I was into it quicker than you, but I do agree, like, that those first few are a little bit like, you're waiting.
And to a certain degree, like, it's almost kind of worth it when I think they get to episode 7 or 8. A lot of the show runs together for me, unfortunately, so I'm going to be screwing that up a lot. But David seems to doubt that what he's experiencing is real. And he's talking about, like, you know, one of the most dangerous aspects of schizophrenia is actually believing you don't have it.
Yes.
Or stuff like that.
Yes,
and that is a genuinely terrifying thought. And that is probably more terrifying within the context of this show, when so much of the first half of the show felt very like, what the fuck is going on? Is this scene real? Is this scene real? Is that scene real? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and like, a lot of it jumps. They play around with like the time frame as well. Like, are we? Is this a flashback? Was it a flash forward before? Like,
and like, so that moment is more terrifying because of the build up. The build up, though, isn't more satisfying. I don't think the build up's more satisfying in retrospect, but it's more like, okay, well, at least we paid that off. You know, if we were going to do that, like, you did it like you did it for a good reason. But maybe, like, it's funny because 8 episodes kind of feels like the perfect length for a lot of shows. I almost wish it was a little bit shorter. I think maybe 6 would have been a little bit better, but that's really nitpicky in the grand scheme. I mean, I'll sign up for 8 episodes a season of any show all day, every day.
Yeah, definitely. I'll take 8 over 22.
Yeah, especially when you compare it to Netflix, which is contractually obligated to do 13. Because of like some deal with New York City to actually film in the city, which is why Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and the one everyone hates.
Iron Fist is good, everyone. Iron Fist is good. Don't listen to Matt Thomas's lies.
Matt,
don't listen.
I'm not even watching it, and I know you're wrong.
You're not. That's not true. Literally Google it. There are so many people out there like, actually everyone's wrong. Iron Fist is good. People got a hold of those first few. The first episode's shitty. They got this narrative built. And then suddenly it's like, oh, everyone, have you heard Iron Fist is shit? No one actually watched the fucking thing. It gets really good. Anyway.
I'm going to have to watch it now just to prove you wrong. But anyway, let's see.
You're going to watch the first episode and tell me I'm wrong and then stop watching it and you're going to feel you're right.
I watched the first 10 minutes and I knew I was right. Anyway, so like, I'll sign up for 8 episodes all day. Yes. Like, I don't want to like say, I don't want to be complaining about that too much. But I do think there's probably like 6.5 hours. A 6.5 hour version of this 8-hour show would be a little bit tighter, and I would prefer that a little bit. But yeah, overall, it ended in a very satisfying place. It ended in a very intriguing place. It ended on a cliffhanger, obviously, in a variety of ways.
Comic books.
I think the ensemble, they could not focus a little bit more, but I would like to know a little bit more about the little team they got going there.
Yes, definitely.
They seemed committed to them in like the first few episodes. Then they just decided, fuck it, we don't have time.
I feel this is a good place to get into this, like the cast and everything. Like the show is about David Haller, who is a schizophrenic mutant. He has many, many powers. He also has many, many personalities in his head. And it's in the first episode, he's in a institution of some kind. He is broken out. Well, no, he escapes, sorry. And then he's also been taken in by this shady government facility. And then he's broken out of that by this team of do-gooder mutants. And it's just sort of a journey about getting into the head of David, finding out exactly what happened in his past, trying to help him control his powers. There are people coming for him, blah, 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 blah. It builds, you find things out. But I feel this more so than a lot of what we've been watching recently, it's important to talk about the cast. And yeah, let's just go from the top down. So Dan Stevens plays David Haller. Dan Stevens of Downton Abbey fame. He's also the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, so quite a high-profile year for him, I suppose. I thought he was really good. For someone who isn't really on my radar until this, I thought he was pretty great. The accent work was good. I enjoyed the scene they did where he was talking to himself with his normal voice and his actor voice. Yeah, I thought he was great. I thought he sold every bit of it.
Yeah, I think my favorite scene is him It's probably the same scene, but it's him in the classroom trying to figure it all out.
The chalkboard scene is amazing.
Yeah, that's where I messaged you, and I was like, the show just got good, the show just got good, the show just got good. And I do think part of that's also tied to the fact that as the show actually does not exist within a vacuum and explores a little bit more of the fun side of, mutants with cool powers.
Yes.
And like the X-Men universe in whatever way they want to explore it, I do think the more I will personally enjoy the show. But I also kind of recognize they don't really need to go there in any way. But that's just a personal preference.
Yeah, well, Noah Hawley, he did it again. Like, I swear, when Fargo first appeared, he was... I don't know if he explicitly said, but the narrative was, this is just an adaptation or a remake or whatever. And then it's like, no, it's a fucking direct continuation. And I feel he did it again here, where there seemed to be a narrative of, this isn't connected, no one's anyone. And then, oh, bam, this is a straight-up X-Men story. He is who you think he is, etc.
Yeah, and I remember reading at one point he said, like, we have to, like, earn our connection with it. Like, we can't just, like, shove stuff in there, expect people to care about it, or expect us to be considered relevant. And they probably gave just enough. I mean, it's basically, like, 2 shots of a distant memory of Xavier's wheelchair. That's basically the only connection we have. But it was probably just enough of a tease that if they want to explore it more, if there's a path to doing that, they probably should.
Definitely. But yeah, Dan Stevens I thought was just super good in selling. I don't think he went too over the top with... Because, you're dealing with a character that has a mental illness, so you're walking on thin ice from the get-go. I think he remained likeable throughout and troubled without being, like, #troubled or whatever. Yeah, I thought he was a perfect choice for this, because he's kind of unassuming but also immediately likeable and everything.
Yeah, he did very well.
He did very well. He was paired opposite Rachel Keller of Fargo fame as Sydney Barrett, which is a not in any way subtle Pink Floyd reference there from Noah Hawley. And she was kind of like... Because when at first they were trying to very much keep it separate from the films, because I was instinctively looking out for characters like, oh, this person is this person, and they were going out of their way to not do that and be like, look, these are all our original creations, etc. It was like, Sid is basically Rogue on steroids, where she touches someone and they swap bodies, and it's... Yeah, she was... I thought she was also great. I think they were really good together. They had this like really sweet chemistry where, because of her powers, she doesn't like to be touched. It's not like Rogue where like you can't touch her because you'll be injured. It was just she was phobic of this happening against her will. So they found all these cute get-arounds, like they're standing in a reflection and like they're lining up their reflections so that they're kissing or whatever. And I thought they were just a really sort of nice little couple, and I thought she was intriguing as well.
Yeah, she's a good actress. She's really good on Fargo.
Yeah,
she doesn't. I think to a certain extent she's still a bit of a mystery as a character, and
yeah.
But
there's some sort of there's a few sort of unexplained mechanisms about how her power works. I feel that they really they sort of really strain towards the end of the series, where it's like, but shouldn't they have just swapped? But they didn't. But
like she still mostly just exists for David. I would like to see like who she is a little bit more in the next season. Like,
sure.
Like what's her life like? And I think that will be less annoying. But good actress, a decent enough role for now. Hopefully, more to come.
Well, like I really liked the scenes where they go into David's head and she's interacting with like the child representation of him, for example. There's a scene where they're in basically a horror movie haunted house that's built up of his memories, and she's trying to keep this young version of David safe while they're running room to room. And one of my favourite scenes, they run into a room and it's adult David having sex with his ex-girlfriend and just the way she played that of like, she's embarrassed because she's walked in on something she's not supposed to see, she's jealous, she's hurt, it's weird, there's the young version of him there that she feels conscious about. I just thought that scene was really well played by her. And yeah, she does mostly just kind of exist for David, but I think the few instances where you see her taking a little bit more charge in his absence, I thought she did those well, and I look forward to seeing what more they can do with her.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. It's like the groundwork is set for
Yes.
there to be a lot more to do with her. Let's hope they follow through on that.
I would almost really like to see, potentially even as the first episode of Series 2, I'd like to see the support team planning to rescue David and like how they did that, because you follow David almost entirely through this show. You're very rarely apart from him, and particularly in that first episode, like these people just appear, and I would kind of like to see how they came together and them talking through going to get David in a way, because I don't know, she has this mystery to her. Sid particularly has this mystery to her. Several of the others do. So something like that would intrigue me. A kind of Life Before David episode might be cool. So I think we've saved until third, but I think for me the biggest talking point on this cast is Aubrey Plaza as Lenny Busker, spoilers, obviously, we're talking about this whole show. She's the Shadow King, who is a very famous X-Men villain, particularly Xavier's nemesis. Not something I ever thought I would see adapted in a film anytime soon, and I love that this sort of quite sophisticated TV show beat them to it in terms of adapting that. Been in plenty of the cartoons and stuff, but it was a pretty good reveal. That because they kind of mess with it a bit. She starts out as David's sort of best friend in the Institute, and then she's apparently horrifically murdered when Sid and David swap bodies, and Sid freaks out using David's powers, and then you get a lot of flashbacks with her, but then it starts to bleed over into being hallucinations in the present, and then the ultimate reveal is she is the Shadow King, who is this parasite living in David's head, feeding on him. And I thought she was an absolute revelation. I did not know she was capable of anything like this. I've only really ever seen her in comedy roles where she's kind of, there's the Aubrey Plaza like persona. The only remotely serious thing I'd seen her in before was Safety Not Guaranteed, and even in that, she's kind of leaning into the Aubrey Plaza persona a bit, but this was crazy. Like, you get the impression she was having the absolute time of her life playing this role, just getting to do things that she wouldn't normally, like being quite androgynous and gender bending with stuff, and doing the sort of horror acting, the sexy acting, the Beetlejuice look. She was all over the place, and I thought she was absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, I think it's probably been the most talked about performance, or even probably aspect of the show was her here. So, I think you captured it perfectly. This is Breakout doesn't feel right. I mean, like, she was on one of the most beloved. Yeah, she was on one of the most beloved sitcoms for 7 years. It's just it's a really good showcase for her abilities. And should we talk about the character's fate at all?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I feel like I said, like, full spoilers on everything. Yeah.
What I meant is, like, should we talk about it now? But I felt like the structure of the show was setting it up where the Shadow King had to die at the end of this season. It just felt like so much. The Shadow King was doing so much. It seemed impossible that they could satisfyingly escape with everyone living, including the Shadow King. And I guess the question becomes, are you glad the character lived on to the next season, regardless of the fact that we get more Aubrey Plaza as a result?
I get what you're saying. I feel the answer to this may be that they might have intended for the Shadow King to die, but when they saw what Aubrey was doing, they were like, we have to do more with this, so they're maybe serving that master more than that of the narrative. I agree, it seemed like a weird, like, Get Out that Shadow King would continue and go away. I would actually personally hope that she doesn't come back for a while. Like, maybe she's teased again at the end of Series 2, and you have a different antagonist because, I mean, we'll get to Jermaine Clement in a minute, but essentially she body swaps into Jermaine Clement, and they drive off into the sunset, essentially, together to cause trouble. And I would hope that it's the case that they're just unseen for, I would hope, like, almost the entire of the next series, rather than it's just, alright, episode 1, they're back.
Yeah. Did you watch Justified?
No, it's one of the many shows that I'm told I need to watch.
Well, one, you should watch it.
Okay.
Except Series 5. It's pretty bad.
Okay.
But the other 5 seasons are very good. Anyway, you notice how I blended UK TV terminology, American terminology there. Series, season, etc.
Sure.
Yeah, I like to...
We all say season now because you've just completely dominated our television, but...
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyway, so one of the issues with Justified was that very early on it became clear that Walton Goggins, he was on the show and he was playing this character. And they had to decide, this is so obviously a breakout character, and he's a villain type character, but what do we do? Like, do we...
Yes.
do we keep him to the end? In which case, it kind of makes things in the middle seem less important. Do we not keep him at the end, until the end? In which case, everything that comes after it is going to seem somewhat of a letdown. And I'm not going to say what happens there, but Legion is kind of quickly. I don't want to say falling into the trap, because it's in a way it's a good problem to have. It means you have a character that is really resonating on some level.
Yes.
But they are definitely now in a bind where they have to decide, okay, if we bring Aubrey Plaza back next season, and we bring the Shadow King back next season, and we go all in on the Shadow King again, and then the Shadow King survives again, what the fuck? Like, now we're just kind of spinning our wheels.
Yeah,
it kind of feels like at this point they kind of need to string the Shadow King along, as you're saying.
Yeah.
And the Shadow King has to be the end game of the show, however they envision the show ending. But they can't overdo it. They kind of just have to like walk a fine line in the meantime.
Yeah. It's a problem with villains. If you don't do enough, you're criticised for not having compelling villains. See most superhero movies. If you do too good of a job, then it's like fans demand more of it. But if you give them more of it, it gets too much. I would argue that perhaps they get out of it a bit because she wasn't operating openly as the villain for like the first half of the show. So it's not like we've had 8 episodes of villainous Aubrey Plaza. Like, I think it was a reveal in episode 5. Maybe they were teasing it late 4. I don't know, but she certainly wasn't full-on maniacal villain until sort of 6, 7, 8. So I still think they will sort of delay the return. I think something happens at the end of the first series that I think will take the immediate attention, and I think you won't see Shadow King again until sort of late. I would rather they treat it like Kingpin in Daredevil, right? So Kingpin is the nemesis of Series 1, appears in like 2 episodes in Series 2, maybe even just 1.
It was about 3 or 4, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, there's like a big Kingpin episode, and then it's reduced to like short scenes.
Yeah.
You know, like he's not like the major factor. I would like to see something like that, and also because you have Aubrey Plaza now inhabiting Jermaine Clement, that's an excuse to freshen it up a bit, like change the vibe of the two. I think those two are going to be a tremendous amount of fun together because they're both just these offbeat comedians that just charisma machines. Well, he's a charisma machine. She's got her own unique presence. So yeah, I wouldn't want them to oversaturate it, but I think she was absolutely amazing. The kind of weird music video scene they did for her, and her getting to like dress like a dude and sit there like talking explicitly about women and stuff as a psychiatrist, and then the Bolero scene, which will come up again later, she was great in that as this black and white sort of horror villain. Yeah, she was great. I would expect to see her get different kinds of roles because of this going forward. And while I hope it's not too soon, I do hope she does come back here eventually.
Yeah, but it is interesting and important to note that your example with the Kingpin, you know, season 2 of Daredevil definitely could have used more Kingpin, just because the Kingpin worked a lot better than a lot of the other things they had going on.
Maybe.
But so the key is going to be like they have to, you know, do what they otherwise do very well.
Yeah. Well, I think Shadow King is like their key villain.
Yeah.
And I think he's the end game because, I mean, if this is Charles Xavier's son and the Shadow King is Xavier's nemesis, the logical narrative thing to do would be to have the son finally triumph over the nemesis. But we'll see where they go with that. I guess Jermaine Clement would be the next person I'd want to talk about, even if he isn't as regular as the others. So he was fantastic here. There's another guy that sort of, you know, he was known for what he did for a long time, Flight of the Conchords, etc. And then in recent years he's been doing these kind of stranger, less him roles, but I loved every single scene he did in this show as this sort of beatnik poet, sort of 70s swinger style guy. And particularly like the Bolero scene where he's sitting there conducting. I don't even know what the fuck was actually happening in that scene, but I know I like looking at it. And yeah, I think him as a villain will be an awful lot of fun.
Yeah, he does a good job. I think probably one of the few side plots that's really effective is the fact that his wife or lover, in the 70s, has been looking for him ever since because he's been trapped in this sort of alternate dimension.
The astral plane.
There you go, sure. That's a thing.
Well, I read it as like an Inception type thing where like he got so addicted to it, he got lost in it.
Possibly. That was when I was just like, nothing you're saying makes sense or is actually what's happening. I am not retaining any of it.
Yeah,
I think like that's kind of, and the fact that like when they're finally reunited, it doesn't like, it's not everything she wanted it to be. Like, that's very sad. It's a cool performance. He's, as you said, very charismatic. You can't keep your eyes off him when he's on screen.
Yes.
And hopefully bigger and better things for him in season 2.
Yeah, I definitely am looking forward to those two being on screen together. I think the little car ride scene they did was great. Driving along, listening to, was it Children of the Revolution? Something like that. Yeah, I thought that was great. So, like, the rest of the cast, I'm going to lump them together because, like you
That's
said...
what the show does.
Yes, like you said earlier, there was not enough work done here to flesh them out. So you got Bill Irwin as Carrie, and Amber Midthunder, which cannot be a real name, as Kerry, which are similar sounding names. They have some sort of thing where they are two people in one body, she emerges from him and is like the kick-ass fighter while he's the brains. I think that is a potentially incredibly interesting dynamic you could play with, and they hinted at it here and there, and I wanted a bit more of it and to learn more about them. They were sort of intriguing, but it was very jarring because they just kind of do it. They don't really present it to you as it is. She just appears sometimes, and it's like, I thought you were Carrie, no, I'm Carrie, etc. They were kind of fun, but not enough there.
On behalf of Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures,
sure,
I would like to apologize to the Fort Peck Sioux tribe and the American Indian population in general for Matt saying Amber Midthunder is not a real name. But it's okay. We move on.
Is that a name you've heard regularly?
I mean, like, if I saw a name like that, I would assume, probably someone from an American Indian background. And, of course, that's exactly what she is.
All right, then. Fine. That's not a name I've seen written down many a time. I apologize.
Matt is racist.
Well, Britain, man. Anyway, Jeremiah. Speaking of racism, Jeremiah Harris as Ptonomy.
The guy who wants to shoot people all the time?
No. The guy that remembers being born. He seemed like of the cast, he seemed like the one they were going to maybe make a character. He had a couple of scenes quite early where it's like, okay, this guy's going to be fun. And then he just almost vanished. And he showed up when it was necessary, but...
No, this is the guy that just literally wants to shoot people all the time in the final episodes.
I mean, fine.
He just comes in guns blazing.
No, his friend does that. Rudy, I think his name is. I don't even know his fucking name because they never tell you his name, I don't think, out loud. Dude called Brad Mann as allegedly Rudy, I think. Yeah.
This show does not do well by its supporting cast. I thought you were completely just making up this person named Rudy.
No, seriously, the white dude out of the...
No, I believe you. I'm just saying, that. Yeah. I was like...
I had to look his
name up. Are you just making this up to defend yourself because I wasn't paying attention?
Yes. No, because I was talking to friends about this as it was on, and I was like, the dude, and I did not know his name. And I was just having to describe, the guy that's in the closet, he got shot, maybe, got stabbed.
They don't have names. They are devices.
Yes.
Anyway.
And then sort of the leader of that little group of offshoots, Jean Smart as Melanie Bird, who... I think she was on Fargo, right? Series 2? Was she the Gerhardt?
Oh, she was on season 2. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
She was a big character in some of the mid-seasons of 24.
Ah.
She was quite beloved, actually, as a character on 24. I think she got some Emmy love for it, too, if I'm not mistaken. At least a nomination or two.
Isn't 24 another one of those shows where it's like tree, woods?
Woods?
Tree falls in the woods. Does it make it... No.
24 was a pretty big deal in America for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, it was because it was a critical hit, it was a ratings hit, and it had a loud fan base.
But it went on for a long time, didn't it?
It did go on. It did go on for too long. She was a part of the last season that was universally beloved. I actually thought it was a pretty bad season of television, but that was, 24 was also a pretty bad show, all things considered. But okay. She was on the last season that was really, really loved by critics, fans, awards, ratings, etc. And I believe she got an Emmy nomination for it.
Fair enough. How was she in this, though?
I thought she was solid. She didn't get a ton to do.
No. She was quite... she sold the heartbreak of the stuff with her husband Oliver Clement quite well.
And like I said, that was one of the few real human things going on the sidelines, so I always appreciate that kind of stuff.
Yes.
This is a really good actress that hopefully, once again, gets more to do in whatever is to come.
Yes.
Because, she's just too talented to be part of the wallpaper.
Yeah. I really like the reveal that there is actually that there isn't a human body down in that weird freezer basement room with the diving suit, which we assume is Jermaine Clement's real body, but it turns out there's no one there, and it's some sort of, I don't know if it's a lie or what that she's telling, and also that he is the voice of the computers in the facility, and she talks to him. It's a nice little subtle touch. But yeah, I would like to see her do more. That's where I think there should be an episode that is the crew before David, because I think I think she needs to be front and center of that and tell her story, and then her recruiting the others maybe. But who knows what will happen there. You mentioned Hamish Linklater as Clark, allegedly he's called, a man who got his face burnt, douchebag from the newsroom. He's in The Big Short as well. I thought he was very good. He bookends it. He starts off good and then he comes back and he's good, and great. I don't know how much. I mean, I feel he's going to be back.
I would be shocked if he wasn't back. They definitely imply that he's going to be a part of things going forward. I think probably one of the favorite comedic moments in the show is when episode 7 ends with this cliffhanger of him showing back up from possibly the dead, for all we know, with this 100 SWAT team members.
Yeah.
Episode 8 starts off with a flashback catch up on him, which lasts, I'd say, at least 10 minutes. I don't want to sound like I'm exagerating.
I think it was less than that, but it felt like a long time.
It was. You get a lot of information. Yes. You learn a lot about the character. You pop back. You're back to the standoff. You think something big's about to happen, and David just uses telekinetic powers to wind them all up into a ball.
Yeah.
And Hamish Linklater sells that so well. I was like,
oh fuck. Yeah, let's talk about that. I love that because this is a superhero show, but they don't frame it as such. And I love when they do actually do something very superhero-y, and they do it in a somewhat casual manner. You just have David just sitting there levitating, or wrapping all these people up into a weird Christmas tree of bodies, and all the crazy shit he can do. And when they're watching on CCTV footage as he raids the facility that has his sister, I guess we'll go back and talk about her in a minute, maybe, who cares, and just seeing this sort of romp of destruction he's doing as he's dancing through the hallways and fucking everyone up. I love that. I love that they hold back on the powers, and then when they use them, they are incredibly impactful or funny or subtle. I love how they handled superhero shit in this series, and I hope they do more like this. And I love to see some of the films tackle it more like this. But when you do a film, you are beholden to make it all huge spectacle. So I guess that's not going to happen. But hey,
yeah. But it was good here.
It was very good here. Yeah, and
one more character.
One more character. Are you talking about the eye, or are you talking about his sister?
The sister.
The sister, okay. Katie Aselton from The League is the only thing I've ever seen her in, as David's sister, who, she's a weird one.
This is a character that definitely exists and was definitely in the show. Her name is in the credits.
Yes.
I am 95% sure of those 3 statements.
Okay, good. What was your read on her in the first episode where he like shows up to stay with her as a character? Like, I was like, is she not a nice woman? I don't know.
At that point in the show, I was convinced the show was just fucking with me at every 10 seconds. Yes. That I really was just like,
is there even a sister?
I am not. I refuse to get invested in anything going on until I know what's going on, which probably makes me sound a little closed-minded, but there's just so much time in the day, and I don't have time. I don't have time for mindfuckery.
I see. And then she just becomes just the thing to rescue after that, and
yeah,
they give her one scene while she's in there, and then they just forgot she was there. I mean, they were doing a lot of things, all of them very centered on David, so that both is and isn't an excuse. But yeah, she was there. Yeah. What she did do is, I think she helped contribute to... Would you be able to hazard a guess as to when this is set? Because she, in particular, dresses in a very sort of 60s, 70s manner.
So that was definitely a question I had throughout. They don't commit, and yes. I'm guessing that's on purpose.
I would say so. Because they're leaving the door open to sort of connect this to main X-Men, if they so choose.
Yeah. Like, there's no hint about how old Xavier is. There's no hint about how long. Now, one thing that I thought that, how long do we think Jermaine Clement's been in the icebox astral plane?
Like
the number I remember, 20 years at least, maybe. Right? So that would be the latest, the first decade of the 2000s, earliest the 80s. So...
But his, like, no way he was, his whole vibe like, is quite 60s, 70s-ish.
Yeah.
So.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and maybe, like, a dude in the 80s who refuses to let go.
Sure.
But he's definitely not a dude in the 90s who refuses to let go.
No.
So, like I said, that's why I'm giving it that 80s to first decade, 2000s frame, with most likely being 80s or 90s. A lot of... you can write off a lot of the mutant home as being like, well, they're mutants. They can make better technology for themselves. That felt like a pretty modern setting.
Yeah. Well, they always have that get out in stuff like this where it's like, secretly there was all this magical technology. But
Alfred was busy inventing Skype after serving the cold soup.
But you should see the printers. They're terrible. Yeah, I like that there is this sort of hanging thread of when is it set, because... I mean, you don't want to set it too far back, or if they ever did some sort of David meets the main X-Men, it's like, well, he's going to be an old-ass man. But
yeah. But then there's, like, it almost definitely, like, has to be McAvoy, can't be Stewart.
Sure.
Kind of thing, so that's a little awkward.
Given that those actors are probably the same age.
Yeah. For a second I was like, Matt, I don't understand your joke. McAvoy and Stewart are not the same age.
No, they're not.
I know.
Didn't stop them making Quicksilver Michael Fassbender's son when that dude is, like, not that much younger than Michael Fassbender, but never mind.
No, that's okay. But I don't think they're overly concerned about that particular thing, nor do I think they operating under, not delusion, but the idea that they definitely could actually have Xavier on the show. Like, I fully expect this show to air completion without ever seeing Xavier.
Sure.
That just kind of feels like the vibe of the show is that we won't actually pay that off in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Nor do they have to.
No.
To be clear,
it's almost more interesting if they don't.
Yeah. So it's hard to say. It's impossible to say, but it's neat to speculate about, if nothing else.
Yeah. That's the thing. I got a great deal of enjoyment out of the first few episodes trying to connect some things for myself, try and determine when is this taking place, where is this taking place, who is this character, who is that, and ultimately it all turns out to be incredibly straightforward, and they're sort of just fucking with people like me who are going to do that.
And of course then, time gets even more complicated with X-Men in a variety of ways, not the least of which is that the original X-Men film, according to Bryan Singer, took place in the not so distant future.
Yes,
that
he's does ring a bell.
Yeah, he's on record as saying that. And to me, which I always found that, to me, there was always something a little retro about it. So I always pictured like early '90s, mid '90s X-Men, but for that one. But so
I think it was like released. Well, it was released in like 2000. It was
2000.
I always took it to be set in like 2000, like the mid like 2006, 2008, something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
something like that. Like, not ridiculously in the future, but definitely in the future. So that kind of messes with it a little bit. Like, then there's the whole... I mean, that brings up a whole slew of questions with the other films.
I feel this entire avenue of conversation is one of the things that's good about Legion. It just exists. Like, it doesn't matter. Like,
and also, like, it just doesn't matter. Like you said, like, it doesn't matter, but it's kind of like, ooh, I wonder how this jigsaw puzzle could fit together if it was ever going to fit together.
Exactly. Like, they kind of... Everything is in play, but it also doesn't... You don't have to sit there thinking about it all if you don't want to. Like, I feel you could watch this knowing nothing about X-Men and still enjoy it, like, fully. There's nothing... And if you like X-Men and you understand the few references they do make, cool. But I think that was probably the mission when Noah Hawley set out to make this, is to make it accessible to people who aren't, you and me. And I don't have a clue how this did numbers-wise and, like, in terms of just wider cultural penetration. I know the first episode got a lot of people talking. I don't know if this is a thing that is a viable hit show.
Ratings fell in, I want to say, half. Yes, they actually literally fell in half. They went from 1.62 to 0.81 from premiere to finale.
Wow. All right, then. Yeah. There you go. Question answered. I guess it will be way more superhero-y next season.
Following FX for a long time, as I really have, in terms of how they operate, I'd say maximum 3 seasons. At this rate, they might be telling them 2.
Sure. Well, that will dictate a lot of what happens.
If it's 2, they can go right back to the Shadow King.
Yes.
If it's 3, they should get something in between.
Yes.
And actually, I don't, to be clear, to clarify, that doesn't mean Jermaine Clement, because while Aubrey Plaza, you could theoretically take a break with Aubrey Plaza and then bring her back for season 3 and have Jermaine Clement fill in season 2. I think, like, the Shadow King can't be the main villain for the final 2 seasons of the show.
No.
Of course, this is wild speculation at this point, since technically it has not been, like, canceled or anything like that.
No. I think it's coming back. I think it's got enough, like...
Oh, no, it's season 2's been announced.
Internet cool factor. Yeah, and of course that, but I think it's got enough good grace to continue for now. Yeah, and
it will have 10 episodes next season, too. Which is... seems unnecessary, but we shall find out.
Yeah. I want to talk about, like, what we want to see going forward in a minute, but I think it's hard to not pay some credence to some of the stuff they did technically here, some of the stuff they did visually. I know that kind of stuff isn't so much your bag, but just this show is, like, so deeply rich in, like, references and subtle stuff. Like, there's so many Stanley Kubrick references, particularly in the first episode. There's all these weird, cool things. I would recommend the YouTube channel New Rock Stars. They actually fell off from doing it, but they did extensive recaps of the first 3 episodes, so just pointing out all these, like, subtle touches, and for whatever reason they stopped after 3. But allegedly they're going to do more. I don't know, but check those out. There's so much going on in this show that you don't notice, but just all these big things like musical numbers and the big bolero scene, which is one of the best things I've ever seen on television. The chalkboard scene, the House of Horrors, the world's angriest boy in the world. I haven't even mentioned it, but the devil with the yellow eyes, which is the sort of more monstrous representation of the Shadow King. Like the kitchen scene where, like, David loses his mind and, like, all this stuff in the kitchen explodes and goes everywhere. Just so much happening visually that, and with David's power set and David having schizophrenia and everything, they had so much opportunity to fuck around, and for it to not just be for the sake of it, as I feel you might think it was in Doctor Strange. And yeah, just visual representations of what's going on in David's head. I found all of that absolutely amazing. And even if, like, the narrative hadn't been good, just some of the scenes they came up with were tremendous. And I feel everyone was talking about, in particular, the big music video with Aubrey Plaza dancing around and the bolero scene. But man, as the dude that doesn't go wild for visuals, what was your read on this? Because I was obviously losing my mind.
It was visually distinct in a very cool way. didn't feel just for the sake of it. It captured the spirit of the show. It enhanced the show. Everything looked beautiful all the time. That is as much enthusiasm I can muster for this topic.
Oh, man. You're breaking the heart of our most loyal listener who wants to hear us talk about the Bolero scene for 20 minutes. I'm sorry, Ben, I tried.
It's actually gotten so crazy hot in the last 12 hours that, I'm massively dehydrated because it's been so cold recently. So, I have no patience.
All right, moving us on to our final topic of
visuals.
The day. Our final topic of the day. So, what do we want from the next season? So it ends...
More weather talk.
More weather. So the show ends really bizarrely with...
Yes.
Essentially, the Shadow King gets away after their whole plan fucks up.
Which was great, actually.
Yes, I did like that. That they come up with this huge, elaborate, sci-fi-ish solution, and then it's like, nah.
I thought that was so perfectly tone appropriate for the show that, these also are not the X-Men.
Yeah.
These are not superheroes.
These are just some mutants.
Yeah. They're well-funded. They are well-funded.
Yeah.
And also, David is brand new to this whole thing. And
you think he's fully got a grip on everything. And I was like, nah, not quite.
Yeah, so I kind of love how it just so simply and nonchalantly just failed. And how easily Jeremy and Clement just walks out. Or how easily the Shadow King walks out.
Yeah.
All of that was kind of pitch perfect.
Yeah.
Especially since... Which was amazing, because they're really building to a point where it's either... they kept reminding us, either everyone's going to die, or one of us is going to win. They essentially just, said that. They could have had, signs flashing that message across. And for them to get out of it in such a clever and appropriate way is kind of astounding in a lot of ways. That was beautiful.
So they get away... Division 3, I don't even remember what they're called, but Hamish Linklater's crew, they almost sort of realise, I guess these guys aren't evil, let's team up. Maybe. I don't know, they sort of leave that a little bit open.
They were pretty quick on that one.
They were very quick on that one. So David and Sid are just hanging out on a balcony, and then this little floating orb appears out of nowhere. And David says, what the and then gets sucked up into it, and it flies away. Mike, what was your immediate read and what the hell happened there?
My immediate read is I have no idea. But two thoughts. One, what I thought that was really effective was his desperation as soon as he realized he was stuck in the prison from Superman and Krypton was great. And this really tense note to end on where there's this pure helpless desperation. It's not calm, cool, okay, what the fuck just happened? It's this is a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Please save me.
Yes, especially as a guy that has been forcibly medicated and put in institutions in his life, literally being in a tiny prison is probably even more stressful. But
yeah. Two, I do worry about one thing. My experiences with Matrix Revolution and Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End have led me to think that people watched Empire Strikes Back as a kid and were like, I want to do that too. Our hero needs to be frozen in the metaphorical carbonite. And this is something...
Jermaine Clement is our hero. He's frozen. Done.
Yes. It was so very painfully and patently obvious that is what Matrix Reloaded into Revolutions, Dead Man's Chest into At World's End did. And those concluding movies stalled out of the gate so hard with the rescue scenes. A TV show has more room to maneuver, but that is always my first thought in that kind of scenario, which is you don't want to come up with a stalling mechanism. And I don't think that's what they were trying to do. I'm just saying you don't want to stall the plot, the story, to do that. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen.
Sure.
I think with a 10-episode show, you can afford to burn an episode or two on a really fun heist, caper, rescue story. But quite frankly, I feel especially burned on that particular device. And I do think it's genuinely notable that a key distinction between Empire and Revolutions at Dead Man's Chest was Empire did it with, while the most beloved character, not the main character.
Indeed.
And it's an entirely different dynamic. The movie cannot go on without with the protagonist. The movie could go on without Han Solo.
Yes.
And quite frankly, they were literally like, just in case Harrison Ford, who was on a picture-by-picture deal, refused to come back, which was a possibility. Like, that's literally why they did that. Like, Pirates of the Caribbean was not going on without Johnny Depp. Neo was literally the one. He was literally Jesus Christ. Like, you could not go on without Jesus Christ in the Jesus Christ trilogy.
Watch them do it when they reboot The Matrix.
I know. Let's learn all about Morpheus as a kid. Muppet Baby Morpheus.
No, baby.
So to me, it's worrisome because the show is not going on without David. There's no tension there. You're behind the 8 ball on how you choose to tell the story in the rescue, if there's a rescue, I should say, to clarify. So that was actually genuinely my first thought, which was, whoa, that was completely unexpected. To, oh, not again.
I see. Yeah, you make a good point, because if you do the episode I proposed where it's a flashback, that's 1 episode gone, and then if you do an episode where they're rescuing David, that's 2 episodes gone. What if they merged them and it was like you cut back to them planning rescuing him the first time and then rescuing him this time? I don't know, but yeah, that is a problem. My first thought was, are they actually going to do Mojo in live action? Because that was my immediate assumption, is Mojo is the one that is behind that. The Devil with the Yellow Eyes already looks like Mojo to me. Like, there was all this speculation about who it was, and I was like, that's Mojo. That's clearly Mojo. It can't be anyone else. And they could have some explanation where the Shadow King once encountered Mojo, and now... It would be a really fucking weird thing to do because of what Mojo is as a character. But this is a weird show, and Noah Hawley's a weird dude, so...
I'd like to thank you, Matt, for me presenting the Doomsday scenario and you presenting... Okay, but let's now make it worse. Let's bring back the stupidest character in the history of X-Men.
Adam X the Extreme, thank you much.
I'll say this.
Did I just describe your nightmare to you?
No. I'll say this. 1, Legion should be kind of like this thing where it's like, oh, you think this is unfilmable? Watch us.
Yes.
And it already kind of is. So... Mojo is pretty much the epitome of that in the X-Men world, where there's no way you can make an actual movie with Mojo in it. Because like, Mojo feels out of place in whatever interpretation I've seen him in so far. Mm-hmm. So
that's Mojo.
We're talking about literal cartoons.
Yes.
So I hope...
It just seems like the ultimate, like, oh, you want it to connect to X-Men? Okay, we're connecting it to this, you know?
Yes.
Like... You want to see us do Wolverine or Magneto? Nah, fuck you, buddy. You going with the weird, spineless slug man who controls television in a whole universe?
Yeah.
It's just, that seems the most, like, visually, that's all I could think of, is that seems like a Mojo type thing. Like, he captures Wolverine in Wolverine and the X-Men and does it, and... I just don't know what else...
This is not helping my headache, Matt. This is not helping my headache.
Luckily, we get to finish now, so...
No, I almost want to see him do it just to see what the fuck happens.
Yeah, I hope it's not like a long thing. I hope it's like one and done, but...
No. And I do think, this goes against a lot of my instincts with television, but I do think Legion is a show that they could just be like, fuck, we're doing an episodic season, and it's going to be 10 episodes, and they're all going to be completely different. I think they could pull that off in a way that most shows could not do in a satisfying way. Like, that's always been like a barrier of entry for me with Buffy. Like, I've seen the first 3.5 seasons, which, as far as I know, are the most well-liked seasons. And I'm just like,
sure.
Oh, another villain.
Yeah,
this villain is killed again.
That happened. That definitely happened. They got they started just doing weird, non-fighty stuff as they went on.
I was so underwhelmed by that. Anyway, that's a totally separate conversation. Yes. But it's more that I do not like Villain of the Week shows. I do not like Illness of the Week shows. I do not like Crime of the Week shows.
Okay. You don't like procedural shows?
Yes. I do not like Of the Week shows. That is not to say that your show should feel like a movie. This has been a hot topic of conversation among TV critics. Your show can still feel like a show, where it's like there's stuff that are wrapped up within an episode, and then it all builds to the end. But I would like to see Legion take on that challenge. I think that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, I feel with David's powers and the multiple personalities and everything, and how eclectic this little cast is in terms of like where they are in the X-Men universe. I feel they could easily do that.
Yeah, so I'd almost like to see them do that than introduce a new villain, like a new big villain.
Yeah. What if not Noah Hawley just had a checklist of stuff that is considered undoable by the main films, and he was just like, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this.
Yeah, starting with obviously the Phoenix Saga, because that's fucking undoable and it fucking sucks. But no, I actually think that's a really great note to end on, which is that Legion is set itself up to be of limitless possibilities.
Yes.
Which can be a trap, it can be its undoing. But guess what? It had one really good season already. Mm-hmm. I think you'd say great, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty great. I was very intrigued by it, and I thought, it's high art in a way a lot of these shows aren't.
Yeah, it was really good. I don't see how anyone who stuck with it didn't like it by the end, at the very least. Mm. And
episode 7, tremendous.
You have that credibility already. You're probably getting at least one or two more. You're definitely getting one. You're probably getting 2 more seasons. Mm-hmm. What the fuck? Like, just do a bunch of shit that no one thinks can be done.
Exactly. And
do a Mojo episode.
Yes, and that was my biggest takeaway from this. It's that this show proved superhero stuff doesn't have to be one way, and that's very much been a narrative where everything is a Marvel movie or a DC movie, or all those CW shows are the fucking same. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is basically the same as those. They have a very distinct feel to them. And it's like, it must be this way. And then Legion's like, no, you can make a more sophisticated character-driven show if you want to. So do that. And I would like to see the films do that as well.
It continues the trend of 3 of the last 4 major X-Men related properties feeling distinctly different from what you expect necessarily from a superhero movie or a superhero property.
That's true.
These are positive things.
There's the through line of Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures, which you can find in its entirety on entertherealworld.com or soundcloud.com/Mike and Matt. Check out everything. We got into Watchmen. It's a very odd, jumpy episode, but it's actually, I'm told, quite good from people who've listened to it. We got stuff coming. Have we ever? I guess next week we start Firefly.
Yeah, we might be recording this week.
We might be.
Which means I should not have forgotten my DVD case of it at my home and instead should have brought it to my girlfriend's where I'm staying for the week. But, we roll with the punches at Enter the Real World.
Yes, I bought it
Or the Real World.
That one too. I bought it on Blu-ray after you brought to my attention that they took it off Netflix. So I'm good to go, but we'll see if my Thomas has actually found a copy of it by the time we record. So Firefly Now, Serenity Later is the name of our next podcast miniseries. And I hope you guys like Firefly, because that's what you're going to be hearing about for several weeks now.
No place to hide, no place to run, no place to run. The mutant age has now begun.
Yeah, there's a TV show called Gift. We should review the pilot, if nothing else.
Okay, we'll talk.
It'll be directed by Bryan Singer. He's a child rapist.
It's been a while since we pointed that out. You're right.